flag normally is. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Supervisor Locke.
A Christmas wish for you. Christmas is the time of year when our wishes and dreams come true. A time of magic and wonder, a time that which truly reflects you. I look at the world around me, the sparkle in the children's eyes. I see the warmth in everyone's hearts and the changes in their lives. You bring out the best in people with your caring and loving way. You make the world a better place each and every day. So have a perfect Christmas. Be sure to have lots of fun. I look forward to seeing you again when this Christmas is done. But for now, I made a Christmas wish for you, for love and joy and laughter, your friends and family all around, and memories to treasure after. I wish for you a Christmas filled with joyous cheer. I wish you a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year.
Thank you, Supervisor Locke. And thank you, Supervisor Powers, for your observation. We'll certainly make sure that the flag returns. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda for this evening. I will call on Supervisor Roble.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move for the approval of this evening's agenda.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Supervisor Roble. Moving on down, this is the time in the meeting in which we allow an opportunity from anyone from the public to speak on any item on the agenda tonight or anything under county jurisdiction. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Is there anyone who wishes to speak? I'll say one more time. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Okay, I will close that item of the agenda and we'll move on right to the correspondence, resolutions from other counties, notices of claim, and petitions for zoning amendment. I'll call on County Clerk Ertmer.
You have one resolution tonight from Oconto County. It's in support of increased public defender access and pay. It'll be forwarded to the Legislative Committee. There's a notice of claim from Wisconsin Public Service to damage to an underground electrical services by the County Parks Department, referred to Personnel and Finance, and one petition for zoning amendment from J.R. Jones in the town of Algoma, requesting a zoning change from A2 to R2, R3 for residential subdivision, and that's referred to Planning and Zoning. And that's it.
Thank you, Clerk Ertmer. Next item on the agenda is reports from committees, commissions, and boards. Any reports from any board member? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is the approval of the proceedings from the November 20th, 2018 County Board meeting. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion, changes in regards to the November 20th minutes? Then all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving right on down to the County Executive's report, followed by the County Executive's appointments. County Executive Harris?
Thank you. Tonight, I would encourage the board to support Resolution 095-122018, which is the revisions to the county's compensation schedule for 2019. This is primarily a shifting of the brackets for the jobs descriptions. If you don't do that, then as people get raises, they eventually get pegged at the top of the range. And you also then have your minimum starting wage falling further and further behind market. There's not a significant cost to doing this initially, because it would only affect people that were at the very bottom of their range. The other resolution, and the elephant in the room to say the least, is the $100,000 to prepare a site for a sexual offender that's served their time in prison. They've been in civil commitment for a very long time, and they've been recommended for supervised release. Now, what I would ask the board to do is to focus on what you're really voting on. This is not a vote whether you like sexual offenders or not. None of us wanted to be facing this choice. It's actually a vote on whether this site is the appropriate site. And I have to tell you, this has been in the Northwestern several times, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, the Herald. I have not received a single complaint from the public for the selection of this site. If we cannot keep this site and are forced to pick another site that has the required spacings, the 1,500 feet from a school, from a park, and from a number of other things, it's likely to force us to look for a site in more rural parts of the county where the spacing is greater. Although even there, it's very, very difficult to find a qualifying site. I also think it's unfair if we have the ability to place a person in the community where they came from to impose them on another community. But you're not voting on whether this person gets placed in Winnebago County or not. They're coming to Winnebago County regardless of how you vote. This vote is only about whether this site is made appropriate for that placement. There's also a risk of subjecting us to a substantial fine. It could be $1,100 a day. It's not a certainty that we'd be subject to that fine, but it is a real possibility. And I might point out that $1,000 of that daily fine actually goes to what the statute describes as the patient. Now, for sure, they're bound to owe a lot of money to the state, but you would, in fact, be giving $1,000 a day to a sexual offender for violation of his civil rights. You need to be aware that that's the real choice that you're making. And the court does have the ability, if they view us as acting in bad faith and that no supervised location can be found, to release this individual to the community unsupervised. So I really hope that you'll pay attention to what Mary Ann says and focus on what the true choices you have. It's whether we go forward with this site or we reject this site and are forced to consider another one that may be a whole lot less acceptable to the community. That's all I have for my report.
Please, go ahead and move forward with the appointments.
For the appointments, there's an appointment to the Aging and Disability Resource Center, Elizabeth Jones.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
There's an appointment to the Veterans Service Commission, a reappointment of Roy Rogers.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And just a final quick note. Many of you have told me that my picture has appeared in news broadcasts, both on Fox and in CNN, in association with a story on voter fraud in North Carolina, and a congressional race there with a candidate by the same name. Definitely is not me, although my picture has in fact been used a couple times in reports on that. So thank you.
I have a question. Can you update us on the 7 other sexual offenders that are supposedly coming to Winnebago County?
We know very little bit about them, but we know of all the people in Sandridge, and there's hundreds of people in Sandridge, that there are 7 other individuals there that are from Winnebago County. We don't know what year they'll come out or if they'll ever come out, but this individual was incarcerated there for over 2 decades. So there's no telling when the next individual might come out.
Say they come out in 6 months, do we plan on putting them there by the highway department also?
I think we'll have to address each one as they come up. My hope would be that, they're going to be in this supervised status for up to 5 years, I think. And it's my hope that they won't come out at a faster rate, nor will they all come from the same community. Hopefully, they're not all from Oshkosh. But I do think this committee did a good job in placing this individual within the city that he came from, because I think you would find a much greater public reaction if we took an individual from one city and placed them in another community, especially in the rural areas of the county, which, because of the greater spacing between farm homes, are easier to do placements.
Thank you, Supervisor Albrecht. We have a couple more questions, Executive Harris. I'll call on Supervisor Binder, followed by Supervisor Wingren.
We're selling that 11 acres by Bison Road. You know, if we're gonna build a trailer park, wouldn't it be wise to build it there? There's nothing there. There's a tavern and a Quick Trip. There, you know, you go where, we're talking about building by the landfill, there's a bus stop there, there's apartments on the corner. Probably 2,000 feet, there's a daycare, there's a church about 2,000 feet from there. You know, you put that trailer park, because you're gonna basically have
Well,
more
there's
than
no,
one-
there's no discussion of a trailer park. We're talking about a single
Well,
trailer.
there's 7 more people gonna be released, and basically, if you're
We
gonna build.
don't, we don't know that there's 7, we know there's 7 more people in Sandridge from this county.
But if you build on 11 acres, then you have room to expand, I guess all I'm saying. Because if you're gonna
Yeah.
put one trailer by the highway, and then you're losing the park, you know. In 20 years, that landfill will become a park, just like Kenny Robo Park was a landfill. That'll never happen as long as we have that house there.
Well, legally it could happen, but because any changes that occur after the placement are allowed. But we don't anticipate this individual being there long-term. They'll be long gone, one way or another, before the landfill would have a park developed in it. And there's no intention to build a trailer park. The permit we have from the city only allows one resident on this address.
And did you have to hook up to the city water, sewer, and stormwater?
There has to be hookups, that is correct.
And you're gonna do all that, plus put the trailer in for $100,000?
That's the hope. Now let me tell you too, that this has already gone through, I believe, the City Planning Commission, where it was unanimously approved. It had a public hearing before the City Council. It was also unanimously approved. But we're only addressing one offender that we have to deal with now. And if others come out, I don't actually have the say. It's that committee, which is prescribed by state law, the Human Service Director and the Corporate Council and some others. They're the ones that will have to address that. And we'll try and pick the best site. But what the problem they run into is in the urbanized area. If you draw a circle of 1,500 feet around all the locations you have to stay away from, it only leaves a few slivers of land within the city limits.
I know the state where they have 45 interchange, where they built that new interchange, like across the way there, they have a lot of remnants that basically are just sitting there. And it wouldn't affect anything if the state basically provided the land for us to build it, rather than basically put that in the middle of what we use as the highway department and solid waste.
Yeah, you don't know what the state's going to accept. We continue to look at alternatives just in case, but I have to tell you, it is very, very difficult to find an acceptable situation. And just looking at the back of the room, you can see that this has not caused the public a lot of anguish. They apparently believe this is an appropriate site.
Thank you, Supervisor Binder. We have a few other questions. I'd ask you keep the questions specifically to the county executive, and certainly if there are other questions when we come up on the agenda. Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, I know that this is a very difficult issue for you and for all of us and all of the department heads. You just indicated twice during your report that you don't want to impose these people on another site other than where they are located. Could you explain the location of the prison? Is everybody from Oshkosh in that prison there?
No.
Oh.
The state prison has prisoners from all over the state and is in fact fairly close to the site we're selecting. This site is near the prison, it's near the jail, it's near the highway department, and near the landfill.
Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. Next speaker is Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, would you please explain the rationale between the way this for the way this was processed? I think one of our issues is that it was, we were kind of informed at the 11th hour No supervisors were involved in the process. And I realized that had you not had to come to the board for money for this, for the living situation, that we would not have had to be involved.
Exactly.
But part of, one of my concerns is that this probably, when it was approved by the governor in 2017, should have become a policy discussion, obviously with internal staff and then as well as the board. Could you give us some insight
Yeah.
on why it was handled the way it was?
Actually, the committee is prescribed
Yes,
by state statute.
right.
And I believe all but one member of the committee is on there because of state statute. The facilities manager was on there because of the need of their cooperation
Right.
if we're doing a project. And the only reason it comes to a vote of the board at all is because we need the money. What we're really charged with is finding an address where there's a willing landlord that meets all the specifications. And if we did that and provided it to the state, and the state accepted that landlord, wouldn't involve the board at all. But when the committee looked at this situation, they decided that they were unable to find an appropriate landlord in space, that it made sense. No one wants this near their property. No one wants their house to be affected in value or how they feel about living there by this placement, that we could actually place it on county land and not impact any individual homeowners in the fashion that a different placement might make. So once they decided a site, they had to obtain an address, approval from the city, and they've gone through that process now. But we do need money from the board to prepare that site. So if we obviously don't get the money from the board, we're back to square one, and we're also vulnerable to being fined on a daily basis. It's not a certainty that we would get the fine, but it is a possibility.
But at what point, I mean, did you have, was there a decision point where you decided not to let the board know about what was,
Well,
the
actually,
decisions that have to be made about this?
The board, many committees were approached by corporate counsel and told where their decision was about the same time that they made the decision to pursue the placement in a particular site.
But before
But
December?
I have to tell you-
Before this month? Yeah. Well, facilities, yes, I understand that was.
Talking about the fall. It was in the fall when we, it was in the fall when we realized that we.
If you could please
Yeah.
speak in the mic, just so they can understand.
It was in the fall when we realized we were not going to be finding private landlords. There was actually a vendor who was working with the state in the fall, and we were very excited thinking this was going to work. And then, as it turned out, the vendor and the state did not have a meeting of minds as to the value involved.
Right.
And we were facing a deadline, and that's when the committee said, we need to do something, and that's how county land came into play. So I would think the county land, and fortunately, a lot of the committee members are here, was probably looked at in, I would say, October. Is that a fair? Yeah. So it would have been in October.
But you did speak to facilities.
Oh, yeah. I've spoken to facilities. I've spoken to the highways. I've spoken to judiciary. I've spoken to personnel and finance. Yeah. So,
And the timing was imposed by the judge, correct?
well, the timing is imposed by the statute.
Okay,
So I don't want to.
Yeah.
okay,
So,
thank you.
but there is a structure of why it came in. And quite honestly, I'm not on the committee.
Right.
But I have to tell you, when they came out with a site, nobody wants this anywhere. But when they came out a site that met our obligation and seemed acceptable to the public, I thought the committee had done an excellent job. There's also something I should point out. If they're looking for a site, quite honestly, you've got to research the site, you've got to research whether any children live in the area. You have to research a lot of things. And if that information is not held very closely, people pull their property off the market or refuse to rent. They're not a protected class. So unless it's kept very, very confidential, your opportunities for placement evaporate as quickly as you look. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Next speaker, Supervisor Powers, followed by Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard some people on the board talking about this, and you yourself have said, it could be up to $1,100. Maybe it won't be that much. Maybe, but I'm thinking if the smallest community, and I don't know what it is, if the smallest community in this county were up against the wall, the state's not likely to take action. But we're the biggest community in the county, and if they've got a brand new ruling, they're more likely to impose the full, I think, they're more likely to impose the full letter of the law against a large community than they would against a tiny one.
Well, and the fine is against the county.
I know, but if the community in question were the smallest one in the county, which would be a real hardship maybe for that tiny community to find a spot, the state might be more lenient. But knowing it's the biggest spot in the county, I think we're likely to get hit with every bit of that fine.
Perhaps, but we're not actually required to put the offender in the same community that they came from. If we were a larger county, we would have to do that. It's based on the county's population. But at our size, we do have leeway. But I have to tell you, I think the lack of public objection is because of the recognition that we're returning an Oshkosh sexual offender to Oshkosh. I believe if we were placing an Oshkosh sexual offender in another community, especially one of the smaller communities in the county, we would have a similar experience to what they had in Fond du Lac County. And that's in fact what drove the change in the law, was that some counties were placing their offenders outside their county, and there was such a strong objection to that the law was revised to put in a lot of restrictions. But when they changed the law and put in a lot of the restrictions, the state could no longer find acceptable sites. And we're aware that they've had individuals that they've been searching for an acceptable site for 2 years. But we had a much shorter time period in which to find a site, or we were subject to fines potentially up to $1,100 a day. The other remedy is that the individual can be released without supervision. That's a remedy I would not expect to happen. But that is a possibility.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. And just to clarify, the law states not required to put in the same community, but required to put in the same county.
Exactly.
So community meaning town, city, or village, but required to put in the same county. That's why we're here discussing it. I'll call on Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you already answered my question just now, because we're talking county-owned land, but it's got to be approved by the city. And I guess that's where I'm totally confused, because if the city is going to call the shots instead of the county, then let the city take care of their own mishaps instead of the county taking care of it.
Well, as you know, land within the city limits is subject to the planning and zoning of the city. And that's what we're talking about, because this land is Winnebago County owned land, but within the city limits of Oshkosh, then their committee had to approve allowing us to carve off a lot and details like that.
But like I said a minute ago, if it's theirs, let them foot the bill. Why should the people of Winnebago County foot the bill for this particular area?
Well, that's
Their area, they're the ones that want it, then let them pay for it.
I understand what you're saying,
I
but
rest my case, sir.
the state statute fines us.
Thank you, Supervisor Finch.
Yeah.
Next and final speaker, Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. something I want to clarify. Being a member of the Highway Committee, Mary, our Corporation Counsel, brought this to the attention of our committee, I believe, on November 19th, the third Monday of the month. During that discussion, the question come up as to whether she had contacted the Solid Waste Committee. Her answer was no. If you look at this map, right here, underneath there's a map in there, there is plenty of available land, 150 yards just east of the County Highway Department driveway.
Well, you know, Mary Ann's in a better
And that is
position.
available, the circles did not come within that.
Yeah.
I question why that committee wasn't addressed, why that committee wasn't asked if they could put the facility on that property. And to this date, I have not received a sufficient answer.
Mary Ann is going to address the board. However, there are prohibited items. There's apartments across Jackson Street. And of course, you've got that 1,500 feet. Remember what that is. That's,
We discussed that. The area I'm referring to is within the allowable limits.
but there's
My question, sir,
there's
is-
very little flexibility. And there's another site, there's a daycare south of the jail.
Still within the allowable limits.
Yeah, but that's how
Supervisor
hemmed
Farley,
in you are.
How about, I'll allow you to be the first questioner once the Corporation Counsel
Okay,
gives their
certainly,
presentation.
sir, but
and
I
that way
do
you
raise
can-
that point. Thank you
Absolutely.
very much.
So I'll allow you as the first, so you can ask that question once she's up giving her presentation. All right, thank you very much, Executive Harrison.
Thank you. Glad to give up the mic.
Thank you. All right, moving on down to the County Board Chairman's report. First, I want to thank everyone who came to the Christmas and holiday party last night. It was a wonderful attendance. There were over 60 county board members, their guests, as well as other county staff, a number of department heads as well. It really was a wonderful event. It turned out very well, and I certainly appreciate all those who attended. Thanked last night the county clerk's office, but want to again thank them for all their efforts. Really, they put all in the work for this get-together. So if we could just give them a round of applause. A lot of work behind the scenes that they do to put it all together. So certainly greatly appreciated. Second thing, just wanted to make sure you saw in your packet a couple adjustments to the schedule in terms of meetings for 2019. We've referred to these previously in a couple of different ways, but just to make certain that folks know that the March 5th special orders session, that's canceled. That's simply because of some work that's being done. And then also just a reminder, and you do have it in your packet, but the April business meeting is actually April 16th, rather than what was originally published as April 23rd. So our April meeting is actually April 16th. And then the final thing I wanted to let you know is that for 2019, the mileage rate has actually changed. So instead of being 54.5, it is 58. So you all, I believe, received some information in regards to that as well. And then, of course, for anyone else who didn't attend, and all county board members, I do want to wish you all an absolute Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and Happy Holidays. It's been a pleasure working with you in all of most of 2018, and I look forward to working with all of you in 2019 as well. So moving on down to a couple of appointments. First one is the Information Systems Committee, and that is an appointment for Supervisor Stephanie Spellman. So I'll ask for a motion. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have one other appointment, and that is to the Land Conservation Committee. This is actually a required appointment for the FSA president, so this is actually a reappointment of Roger Zentner. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And so that concludes our appointments. So we'll move right on down to the presentation on supervisor's release law in regards to sex offenders. So I'll call on the Corporation Counsel, Mary Ann Miller, as well as Attorney Samuel Hall from Crivello and Carlson. Corporation Counsel?
Thank you. Act 184 was signed into law by Governor Walker this past spring and became effective on March 30th, 2018. The act, as you've heard, made changes related to the entity responsible for finding housing for sexually violent persons, specifically obligating the county of the offender's residence, as opposed to the state, to find housing. The act also required the offender's county of residence to form a temporary committee to identify a residential option. By statute, the committee was to consist of the county human services representative, and that was Dr. Bill Topol, a state Department of Human Services representative, a local parole and probation agent, county corporation counsel or designee. I was on the committee, as was my assistant Jeff Mann, a land use planning representative, and we had Dean Katarabik from GIS, and the Winnebago Temporary Committee also had Mike Elder serve on the committee, who is the Director of Facilities. Before we go any further, I want to thank all of my fellow committee members for all of their hard work over these last few months. I also want to thank Sam Hall from Crivello and Carlson, who has been basically involved with a lot of this in other counties, for being available and offering his expertise on these issues. There are strict parameters as to where an offender can be placed. Specifically, as Mark Harris indicated, 1,500 feet from a school, a child care facility, a public park, a house of worship, and a youth center. If the victim was an adult at risk, the 1,500 feet would be from a nursing home or an assisted living facility. If the victim was under 13 years of age, placement cannot be into a residence adjacent to a property where a child primarily resides and the living quarters are less than 1,500 feet apart. The statute directs the committee to prepare a report to identify an appropriate residential option within 120 to 180 days. If that option is not identified, the county can face up to $1,100 per day in fines. Now, let's talk about supervised release rules. During the first year on supervised release, an offender cannot leave the residence without a chaperone. There is no setting foot outside of the four walls of the residence. They cannot go to the mailbox to get their mail. They cannot go to the front porch to get a newspaper. They can only leave for a specified purpose with a chaperone, and it has to be pre-approved. There is GPS and electronic monitoring required. The person must continue in treatment, and if any rules are violated, the supervised release can be revoked. The other piece is the offender can remain on supervised release indefinitely. A prosecutor who handles a number of these prosecutions throughout the state has told me that the longest an offender has been on supervised release on his caseload has been 11 years. My understanding is the average is typically 3 to 5 years. This prosecutor also told me that research shows treatment and completion of relevant treatment programs reduces the risk by 33%. Who is this person that is basically knocking on our door? He was a resident of Winnebago County at the time of the crime. He is in his late 50s. He was charged in 1993. He pled no contest to first-degree sexual assault of a child under 13. He was sentenced to 5 years of probation with 6 months in jail. Before he completed his sentence, his probation was revoked. He went to Sandridge under a civil commitment in 1997. In 2006, he did win supervised release. He was revoked a year later in 2007 and went back to Sandridge. In 2009, he won supervised release again. He was revoked in 2012. In terms of the case at hand, we had a Winnebago court order supervised release for this offender in January of 2018, January 10th. Now remember, the law did not go into place until March 31st, 2018. On May 23rd, 2018, the court ordered the county to be tasked with finding a residential housing option. On June 21st, 2018, the court held a status conference, and this was the first time Winnebago County was in court on this case. Throughout July and August of 2018, people were asked to join the temporary committee. A GIS map was created with all the statutory criteria entered. A list of landlords was obtained. Landlords and vendors were approached. Outreach was made to law enforcement. Searches were made for foreclosed properties. On September 4th, 2018, there was a status conference in court. And right after that time, in the fall, there was a promising lead, as I referenced earlier, with a vendor, but ultimately the state and vendor could not come to a meeting of minds regarding terms, so the temporary committee had to go back to square one. It was also at this time that the state representative, the DHS representative, advised me that she wished me good luck because apparently the state had been looking to house someone in Winnebago County for 2 years without luck. And remember, we were tasked to do this and had a very short window. We, the committee, wanted to find a private vendor. We thought we could, but basically after a thorough investigation, looking at properties and lands available, facing a deadline, not finding qualifying housing, the temporary committee agreed that Winnebago County owned land surrounded by county property and located near the sheriff's department was an appropriate residential option. Sam Hall, on behalf of Winnebago County, went before the Oshkosh Planning Committee on December 4th, asking for permission for 2 things. Number 1, to carve out a small piece of the large parcel of land owned by Winnebago County, and to get that smaller parcel zoned from institutional to institutional residential. And as Mr. Harris represented, the Planning Committee agreed to the request unanimously, as did the Oshkosh Common Council. Now, the temporary committee met a November 19th, 2018 deadline of submitting a report with an appropriate residential option, namely an address. The offender's attorney filed a motion seeking damages of $1,000 a day because he argued that the residential option was not met. We successfully argued before the court that we provided an appropriate residential option, and the court agreed. Sanctions were not levied, but that ruling can change. We have another hearing on January 4th, 2019, at which time the county must show that a residential option is in place. As Mr. Harris indicated, we are continuing to explore other options in case this option falls through. And it is likely that those options will not be in the city, even though this offender is from Oshkosh. What is the risk of not having a residential option in place by January 4th. There is the $1,100 a day fine, and only the judge can determine that. Vicki Fitzgerald told me that that totals about $400,000 a year if the $1,100 fine is levied. But what is more concerning, and I'm not saying $400,000 is not concerning, but what also looms is the prospect of discharge of this offender into the community without any supervision other than signing up for the registry. In my discussions with the prosecutor who handles these 980 cases throughout the state, he advised me that there have been 3 judges who have said that they will release offenders without supervision, and these offenders can live anywhere they want if there is no residential option. And this prosecutor, to use his words, said, "These are not idle threats." So the bottom line is, this proposed location is the safest area to place this offender, as safe a place as you can get. The committee, I believe this minimizes the impact on the community. It is near the sheriff's office. And basically, I thank you for your attention. We will now answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Corporation Counsel. So we'll go ahead and open it up for any questions that anyone has. The first, we'll give to Supervisor Fari. He had a question that he asked of County Executive Harris, so Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to my comments before, I believe we're all aware of those.
Yes.
Am I correct in my observation and interpretation of your statements? Approximately 150 yards east of where you want to put it is an allowable site.
No, that is not correct, and we can actually have Dean Kotarabic. We are dealing with, aside from a park, a set of apartments, and under the statute, it specifically indicates that if you are dealing with a sex offender who is involved with children, and this is a person who is a sex offender who was involved with children, the properties cannot be adjacent to properties that house a child primarily, coupled with the fact that the property cannot be within 1,500 feet. Given that those apartments, we moved as far east as we could. I have to tell you, we were also hoping we could look at some of the land on the sheriff's property, or by that property, but his driveway abuts an in-home daycare, so that took that out of the operation. But you are correct that I did not speak with the Solid Waste Board. I am going to speak with the Solid Waste Board tomorrow, but the location of this unit was the farthest most east we could move and be within the statutory criteria.
So you're saying, Dean, let me address that to you. You're saying on that parcel of property I'm referring to, which is under the ownership of the Solid Waste Department and Committee, none of that area is within the outside of 1,500 feet.
You said 150 yards.
I did.
from
That
the
would be
present
approximately
site.
400 feet. Yes, sir.
I measured 150 yards from our proposed site to the east, back towards the intersection
Yes.
of Jackson and Y.
Yes.
You are correct. That still would be outside the circles of exclusion.
Thank you very much.
But there's one other piece, and I'll have Attorney
That was my
Hall.
understanding.
Okay, all right.
So that area is allowable to be built on.
And I don't believe it is, and Attorney Hall could answer that, since he was in front of the Common Council.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Marianne. There's a few issues. First is the entire parcel has to fit within that boundary. It's not a matter of just picking the corner of a home compared to the corner of the home.
But you could separate and create a smaller parcel, just as you've already done with this one.
Conceptually, I mean, you
Thank you.
can't rule
Yes,
that
sir.
out, absolutely.
Okay. I don't want to mislead anybody in
Yep,
this
no,
discussion.
absolutely.
Yes.
May I just make a few comments?
Absolutely, please, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Harris and Mary Ann kind of covered everything, but I just want to give you a little bit of perspective from my background. I'm in private practice at a private firm in Milwaukee and represent cities and counties and villages throughout the state, dealing quite a bit with sex offenders and related ordinances and laws. As everyone has already conveyed to you, this is a new law, with it being effective in March of this past year, in March of 18. There's been a couple of other counties that have gone through this, but only a couple. Marinette County, to our knowledge, is the first county to have confronted this, and they had a relatively easy go at it. They were able to find a parcel that fit perfectly. They had a private landlord that was willing to rent, and it went very, very quickly and very smoothly. But that's really all that we have to work off of. Milwaukee County is going through this as well. They have the added requirement of not only bringing the offender back to Milwaukee County, but they have to actually bring the offender back into the city or village that the offender was from. And so they have, I would say, some better options, because they have far more vendors that are willing to work with them. This has become a cottage industry where folks are going out and acquiring, they're measuring the distances from schools and daycares, and they're going out and buying foreclosures and buying homes and turning around and renting them to the state for a profit. And in Milwaukee, they're able to be far more profitable doing that than they would be here in Winnebago County. So you're not alone in this. This is something that is affecting the entire state. We're certainly on the early edge of it, though. There's only a couple of counties that we can identify that have gone through this. But if we look in our rearview mirror, we know that there are several other counties that are confronting the same issue and having to deal with it. One other thing I do want to drive home, because I think it's very important, and to give you a little bit of context, the possibility of, if this doesn't go through, and if the court, if the judge ultimately isn't satisfied that there's an appropriate residential option, the State Public Defender's Office has made it very clear that they believe the remedy for that, in addition to all of the fines, in addition to the attorney's fees, they believe the remedy to that is that the offender should be released without supervision. And we all may think that that's absolutely crazy, and how could anybody ever order that? However, I have to tell you that when you talk to judges throughout the state, there's a lot of judges that are skeptical of 980 just in general. That this is a civil commitment statute. This is using civil law to commit somebody, and Mary Ann just described their living arrangements for at least the first year. And it's not a criminal conviction, it's not a criminal finding, it is a civil commitment. And so there are a lot of judges who look at that and have some concerns and have some problems with it. And while we all may be shocked to think that an offender like this would be released without supervision, I have to reiterate, it is a very, very real possibility, in addition to the potential fines. So I wanted to give you that context to let you all know that you're not alone, and that counties throughout the state are going to struggle with this. This is a difficult statute that imposes very, very tight deadlines on county officials, and it remains to be seen how other counties will handle it. But frankly, stepping into this when I did, it's really remarkable that this much work was able to get accomplished in this short of a period of time to comply with the court's order. So those are the only comments I wanted to make per se, but Mary Ann and I are happy to answer any other questions.
Supervisor Farley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your comments, sir, but as I believe Dean has demonstrated here, we do have an alternate site. It is within 150 yards or 100 yards east of the proposed site. So we do have an option and an answer to this issue. My question before this body is, why aren't we pursuing that option? And I think we should pursue that in a very short period of time. So the question is, we accept the premise of the law, we accept our liabilities, but I seriously question the location of where you want to put it, especially when apparently you knew, or maybe it was just revealed to you, that you can move it to the east.
And I think there is a caveat, because this was a surprise to me.
So, your first question, moving.
Now, I'm using a general 150 yards, 100 yards might work.
So, your
And
question.
then you can go not only east, but you can go southeast.
So your question was to me, and you must have been looking at the same map that I have here. I wish I could project it for everybody. But your question was to move 150 yards or 150 feet east towards the intersection. And your statement was you would stay outside the exclusion zones. That is
Towards-
correct.
Towards Highway 76.
Towards Highway
When we're-
76 or
intersection,
Jackson.
I'm referring to that
So
intersection.
there's another kicker that comes into the criteria, which is not mapped, unfortunately, because I don't know where kids currently reside. So the apartment complex on that intersection there then forces us to go 1,500 feet more. So
Now,
it
the
puts us.
apartment complex is on the east side of the intersection.
Correct,
Yes,
but
sir.
now you have to measure 1,500 feet back. So that's why that site is just barely outside another zone. Does that make sense, Mr. Varg?
Not quite clear in my mind. If you come 1,500 feet from
Yep.
that residential property, and I assume, are you talking from the buildings or from the property line?
From the property line, because
Okay.
the kids obviously
So
would
that
play
would
in
be
their
adjacent
yard.
to the right-of-way of Highway 76. You come directly west 1,500 feet. That should put you somewhere in the middle of the property that is owned by the solid waste.
It's very close to,
Yes, sir.
back to the spot that we proposed. If we go the 150 back, that does violate, that, so.
So you're saying the 1,500 feet is right on the property line of the county highway department?
It's very close.
Be specific. I mean, in this issue, are we talking 300 feet's very close? 400 feet's very close?
Let me clear that. Let's measure that again.
I'm trying to give us an option here, folks, and I think this is something that might be feasible.
I measured from there to there, that's 1,500. See that little line?
Yeah, but it wouldn't have nothing to do with prohibiting it, right? It's not a park or nothing.
Could I show you this, Chuck?
Sure, you certainly can.
Make sure we're looking at the same thing. So what I did was I measured 1,500 feet. You can see that coming up over here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's back.
This is your circle.
Yep. These are the current exclusion zones, but
Yeah.
now we have to add the 1,500 because there's children present.
Yeah.
And that puts you right back.
Okay, but the
Where we were.
1,500 feet
Okay,
is to this point?
I know we want to answer questions, but since the rest of the body can't see that, I guess I'd ask us to bring it back to the mic.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions, Supervisor Fari, for the moment?
Based on what I'm seeing, and obviously I can't ingest this in a very short period of time, but I still, it looks to me like there is an option to move it to the east, some distance, which I will not define, but I believe that option needs to be explored in more absolute definitive detail.
Thank you, Supervisor Fari. Next,
Chairman, can I just,
Please.
and in response, I would say, if that were the case, given the fact that we would have to go back through the process with the city planning department, common council, and essentially it would not be possible to do by January 4th, because we're on December 18th.
Can you not ask for an extension from the judge? Would the judge not be acceptable to, he's looking for an address. And can we not say to the judge, well, we have one address, possibly two, can we explore the second one? And ask for an extension?
At
Is
this
that-
point, we have already disclosed an address. We had an obligation by November 19th, under court order, to disclose a residential option. We did that. By doing that, that then shifts the ball to the state of Wisconsin's court, where they have to come up with a supervised release plan based on that address. The state has that in the works. It may already be completed for all we know. We haven't seen it. But then they have to submit the state has to submit the supervised release plan to the judge, and then we have a hearing about that on January 4th. That supervised release plan, based on the address that's proposed in front of you, is perhaps already completed or will be completed momentarily, and then that's what the court is going to rule on.
And I believe it's due tomorrow, the supervised release plan.
Well, then we have to go back to the issue of the lateness of the 11th hour presentation and that kind of issue. So I understand the plight you're describing here, but to put a legislative body in this position is troubling at best. And I'm hopeful that we've described, or at least I have, an option. I don't know the legal process, but I think we all have to look at this as an option and hopefully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fari.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you.
Next speaker is Supervisor Rasmussen, followed by Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First question is on this fine. I heard that we may be imposed a fine, that it may be up to $1,100. What, if you've submitted this already and we're this close, we don't know what this fine is?
No, the fine is defined by the statute.
Right,
and
but my question is, we were told that we may be fined, but may not.
Up to $1,100 per day.
Why would that be clear? Why wouldn't that have been clear to us? That nobody has told us if we don't do this exactly what this fine is?
Well,
The Supervisor, the statute builds in discretion for the court. It's written almost like a criminal code or a criminal ordinance that would say, not to be fined more than X number of dollars. And so what the legal process behind this is, if we don't comply with the statute, the Public Defender's Office will move for sanctions. The statute specifies that the sanctions are no more than $1,100, no less than $100 a day and no more than $1,100 a day.
And then did I hear correct that this money gets paid to the offender?
looking at the statutory language, that is correct. However, the state has indicated that essentially the money is going to go to the state. So even though the language of the statute, and I can
Which
tell
is
you
it?
this. Oh, I'm sorry, huh? I'm sorry.
Which is it?
Ultimately, most of this money, I believe, would go to the state. But if you look at the language of the statute, it says the individual who is the offender may recover damages, and it talks about in one section of not less than $100 for each violation. A violation is per day. And then the statute goes on to say, any patients whose rights are protected under this section may bring an action against a political subdivision, which the county is, which willfully, knowingly, and unlawfully denies or violates his rights, and the patient may recover damages of not less than $500 nor more than $1,000 for each violation, together with costs and reasonable actual attorney's fees.
Okay, maybe you can't answer this, but we have 4 state representatives that represent our county. Does anybody know if they voted yes on this?
Well, I can tell you with the research I did, the Senate voted unanimously for this.
So 2 did.
And the Assembly had overwhelming support, but for 5 who were from Milwaukee and who were from Madison.
So our 4 did. Did anybody contact them and ask them if they actually read this thing?
I'm going to actually take the liberty to give the opportunity, if that's right, to Supervisor Shorsey, because I know she did look into this and reach out to one of our state representatives, who specifically was involved with
Can I
the
get
creation.
time back then when she's done?
Absolutely.
I have another question.
Okay, thanks. I did talk with Mike Shaw and his office, and I'm sorry, is that okay? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Anyway, so I talked to Mike, and I had actually asked if he could come and speak to us during the public comment portion of our meeting, so he could explain. He was the chairman of the committee that dealt with this legislation. So we had a very interesting discussion. I sent you some materials late. I realize it was late yesterday, but this has been kind of a rushed type of thing. But first of all, he said
Remember that this is all about the constitutional rights of this individual, and that's a big driver of what's happening. Their project was bipartisan, and he said, obviously, everyone is in the not in my backyard mindset, but realized that we had to come up with some kind of fair process. And he was involved with meetings in the community of El Dorado. And he said what was happening is the judges in Racine and Kenosha counties were wanting to send the violent sexual offenders to other communities for housing. So they were doing that, and El Dorado evidently has finally got to a point where they said, we're doing more than our share. And so that's what the discussion ensued about where people should be placed. So I look at this, it's kind of a protection in a way, because we have a prison here, we have a mental health institute, et cetera. We could have been perceived as a dumping ground. And so that occurred to me. And then he did say that these people are on GPS monitoring for life. And that's the first I had heard. So that's not true.
Certainly when they're on supervised release, they are.
If we could reserve those questions, I wanted to give her an opportunity to answer the question that he was, and certainly if there's another question, but I told him I would give him back the floor once
Yes,
you had an
so
opportunity to answer questions.
Anyway, so that is what he told me. He said he'd happy to talk to anyone who wanted to discuss this with him, and it was unanimously passed. So yeah, it's kind of a responsibility, but a protection.
Thank you, Supervisor Sorcia. I'll now bring the floor back to Supervisor Rasmussen.
Okay, you talked about this person gets in this trailer and cannot leave without supervision, correct?
For the first year.
So are they locked in, or are they on their own decision-making on that? Is that door locked from the outside?
I don't know the answer to that question. I know they have electronic monitoring. I know
So-
the sheriff is here. He can answer.
So the system
some
says, the law
questions.
says that they
Yeah.
have to stay in this thing and can't go out of the building, but are they locked in?
Well, they can go out of the building with a chaperone.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm saying,
yeah.
I would think locking them in would probably constitute a fire hazard and all sorts of issues. So I don't think either of us could say for certain, but I think it's unlikely.
okay, so
that
you
they're
have,
locked
you
in.
have different levels of, what I understand, you have different levels of sex offenders that get released, and some are rehabilitated and are allowed to be back into society and don't have all these restrictions, correct?
There are some that have an outright discharge, and then there are others who are on supervised release, yes.
So, and you probably can't answer this because this probably goes to the law, but if a person like this is not rehabilitated and they have to be put in this trailer, why are they being let out? I mean, this is just bizarre.
The only thing I can try to say to help with this is to keep in mind that these are 980 offenders. So these are offenders, and I'm not defending them, but these are offenders who have been convicted, done their time, and then once their time has been done and they've paid their debt to society, the court system is saying as a civil matter, not as a criminal matter, but as a civil matter, we still don't trust you, and we want to keep our eye on you and keep you under extended supervision. And that takes us to the constitutional issues, because, like I said, there are an awful lot of judges that just look at this whole 980 system, the concept of using civil commitments for people who have been convicted and done their time, and then still keeping them held up indefinitely, keeping them under house arrest and the like. And so that's the rub here, is that we could say what we want about the original sentence that was imposed in this case, but the bottom line is he was convicted, he served his sentence, and now under 980, he's still going to be committed through a civil process.
I just find it odd that they voted on something like this and approved it, but thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rasmussen. Next speaker is Supervisor Finch, followed by Supervisor Gabbard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, are there other counties doing this at the present time? If so, whom might they be?
When you say doing this, just
What do you want us to do?
to put the county into the business of
Yes,
being a
sir.
landlord. I'm not sure that any counties are. I know that
So-
there are counties that are evaluating it. The thing I would say is that we are, in Winnebago County here, one of the early counties. As I said, Marinette was first, Milwaukee's going through this now, and then it's us.
Okay. The land, are we gonna use our own land, or are we gonna, rent land? Are we gonna build a new building for this?
It is Winnebago County-owned land. And so, and then the thought was to acquire a mobile home, put a concrete slab on the land, and put that mobile home on the concrete slab, and have hookups, as Mike Elder was helping us with that piece.
So are we talking,
Oh, yeah, oh, and obviously charge rent.
are we talking just one home, or if we have 5 people, we'll have 5 homes?
No.
We have 10 people,
No.
we'll have 10 homes?
This is the thing. There is only one person that Winnebago County is facing right now. Yes, there are 7 other Winnebago County residents in Sandridge. However, I continually ask the state, are any of these people, on the horizon? And the answer, as of a couple of days ago, is no. And I can tell you that this person, who we are tasked with finding a residential option for, has been at Sandridge for almost 20 years. So I don't know anything about these other 7 people, other than the fact that we're not facing, you're going to have to address this, absolutely, sooner
And
than
who's gonna-
later. But the
and-
one we need to look at right now, the one that is basically looking at a potential $400,000 fine, is one person.
Okay, now who's gonna pick this individual that gets this mobile home and whatever? How do we pick who this individual gonna be?
He's picked for us.
Yeah, they said, here you go. Here's Joe Smith.
Who is he says this? Who says this?
Well,
You know, I hate to have all these,
No,
these,
that's
these,
fine,
these
that's fine.
questions, but
No, no, no,
I
no.
keep saying he, who, she, what, but I'm not getting what
That's
I
fine.
want.
Any 980 sex offender who is at Sandridge has an option every year to petition for either outright discharge or supervised release, okay? This person that we're talking about, who is a former Winnebago County resident, petitioned for supervised release. He was examined presumably by psychologists, and they said, okay, so he applied to the court and said, I want to be eligible for supervised release. The court, Winnebago County, said, all right, you may be eligible for supervised release. And the court ruled on that in January of 2018.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Supervisor Finch. Next speaker is Supervisor Gabbard, followed by Vice Chairman Egan.
Probably I'll start with you, Mary Ann, and maybe Sam will get in the middle of this. When you say that the person cannot leave those 4 walls of the home without a chaperone or supervisor, is that person going to have a social worker that goes grocery shopping, does all that, and the sheriff's department supervising at the cost to the county?
The state is the one who is responsible for providing the supervision. Clearly, and since it is city property, or city-zoned property, it is actually the Oshkosh Police Department who is going to be involved. However, our sheriff is a stone's throw away and will obviously be looking. People can go into this home, in terms of these probation agents and social workers, any time of the day to see how things are going. There are 72 to 74 standard rules. And the state and the social worker decides which rules to apply. But these rules can range from, you're not allowed to have internet access, you're not allowed to have anyone in the home, you're not allowed to own a pet. Amazingly confining rules. And again, they are confined to the 4 walls of that residence for the first year.
Okay, so I wouldn't want to have that situation, but whatever. So you're saying, and where I was leading to was, which police force is going to be in charge of this, because it is in the city. And I understand Sheriff Motz is real close, so who's going to be in charge of policing this?
It would be the city of Oshkosh, and I'll refer to Jeff Mann because he's been in touch with the Oshkosh Police Department.
I have had an opportunity from the get-go. In fact, per statute, that's one of the requirements, is that we get in touch with the local law enforcement, and then they have an opportunity to have a say. They can do a supplemental report if they wish. I've had the opportunity to speak with Lieutenant Brian Schultes through the Oshkosh Police Department. Kind of gave him kind of the 5-cent presentation that you're getting here tonight. And him and I talked about it, and they are aware that they can present that report if they want. Thus far, they've opted not to do that, but they certainly are aware that this does lie within the city of Oshkosh and city of Oshkosh jurisdiction.
Thank you. This is just my opinion. It appears this person is leaving a facility and going to another facility, and for 1 year, he's still confined. So, okay, I understand that. And maybe you can't answer this, but the rent situation. Do we have an idea of what the county would get for rent? Who sets that dollar amount that the
Yes.
state would pay the county?
My understanding is the rent typically goes between $1,000 to $2,000 per month. That is the going rate. And DHS in Wisconsin will sign a lease for 1 year, so that if the person is continued on supervised release, there has to be a new lease, and then at that time, the county could say, okay, well, if we were paying, $1,500, given the cost of living, it should go up to $1,700. But again, that would be the county's decision.
So now I heard you just say if the supervision continues. So the first year he's supervised, what happens after the first year? Is he unsupervised?
No, it depends on basically the state committee and task force who is looking at this person to see how much progress they're making. One of the other requirements during that first year is that they continue with therapy. So I would assume the state would be contacting the therapist to see how this person is progressing.
But are you thinking or saying, or can we assume perhaps, if he does everything correct, he serves the 1 year of supervision, the second year he could get off of supervision and could leave that location and go wherever he wanted to live? Or is he confined to that living space?
Well, I guess it really would depend on the situation in terms of if his social workers and therapists think he's doing well, then perhaps, and again, it's not the county's decision, would say, yeah, he can move on from supervised release. And then if he's moving on from supervised release, I can't see him staying in that mobile home.
That's where I was headed with this. Then he could go and find a place in the city of Oshkosh without supervision. So we're only really guaranteed 1 year of him being supervised until we see where he is at the end of that 365 days. So he could be released from supervision and move.
I think all of these things are possibilities. Another
Okay,
possibility that we haven't discussed
Okay.
is that he could violate the terms of his restrictions
Correct.
and get right back to Sandridge next
Right.
week. So
That too.
it's impossible to predict.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Gabert. Next speaker, Vice Chairman Egan, followed by Supervisor Warnke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did also, along with Supervisor Shiskey there, I went ahead and I contacted Mike Schra and also, Mike Schra and Gordon Hintz, and I got a lot of the information that she had gotten. There was no opposition when it come to this. So we sit there and I said, well, who was let know? I don't think any of this Winnebago County Board, or how did we know we were even supposed to go down there? And he blamed it on our association, counties association. I don't know if, Mark, if you get that magazine or who all gets it, but we should be looking at that and looking for all these. He said, because some of the times, some of the things come out afterwards. And I give credit to Mary Ann and her assistants there, because do you realize that this was actually done on May 23rd by a judge right here? He's the one that made the decision, put this underneath the new act. It actually went into effect on March 28th, and he was one of the first ones on May 23rd to put it in. Our own judge that was elected right here in this courthouse. And he gave him 6 months to furnish this person a house. It isn't the state's fault. It's some of our elected officials. So you got to remember that. And then to Supervisor Rasmussen, I'm not an attorney, but I also went ahead and read up on this because I did vote for it in facilities and that, and then I thought, well, it was my obligation that I should. Like she said that, but it does not say who any patient who has the rights protected under this section, and goes on and it says about the $500 or not more than $1,000 for evaluation. It does not say who gets it, but down the bottom it says cross-references Department of Health Services. So I would think that DHS, but right above that then, the A, it says the individual may recover any damages as may prove, together with exemplary damages of not less than $100. So I think that the person gets the $100. I would think the rest goes to DHS. So I do have a question to Mary Ann in her committee. Who is responsible for giving this board the information of issues like this, being that here started clear back way before, and I'm not blaming you because I know that you weren't there at that time, but May 23rd this decision was made, and now here we are in the 11th, you might as well say the 12th hour now, and might be by the time we get out of here, so.
Well, I can tell you, when the task force was put together, we were not wanting Winnebago County to be a landlord. We were looking at private vendors. And again, it was only and if that was the case, if there would be no outlay of county funds, we would not be coming to Winnebago County. However, when it became apparent that we were not going to have a private vendor, that our only option was to go to county land, that's when I started reaching out to, actually I spoke to the county executive and said, we have an issue here. We had a November 19th deadline. So that's when, as you know, I went to facilities and highways and judiciary and personnel and finance. And so that's basically where things went.
So my last comment, and it's not a question, this here goes back to our legislative board. Sometimes we say, well, we shouldn't get involved in state and other issues. Well, here's one that, I won't say it slipped through the crack, but this is one that maybe we should have been talking about if it would have been there. So that's all I have for right now.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Supervisor Warnkeep, followed by Supervisor Albrecht.
I have a lot of questions. First of all, I'd like to know, the attorney, who do you work for?
Is this up to me?
To me?
Yes.
Well, I work for you.
Oh, you do?
No, my background here is through the county's insurance carrier. So when this started to, as Mary Ann just accurately described, how it became clear that the least intrusive means of using a vendor was not going to end up working, the county reached out to the county's insurance carrier, and the insurance carrier has a mechanism in your insurance policy that even though there's not a claim, there's not a lawsuit or anything like that, it allows for the hiring of an outside attorney to come in and kind of pinch hit and help. And so that's what triggered me. So I'm being paid through your insurance, but I represent you.
Well, that's good to know. I certainly hope that you're going to back us. I think that there are so many factors involved in this situation. First of all, I'm very leery of the cost of $100,000 because I've seen it 1,000 times where people will come and bring a project up and they'll say, well, it's going to cost $100,000, and you know darn well it's not going to. It ends up being $200,000. One of the reasons is you've got these people who work at the highway department and solid waste. Now, there's a lot of ladies there, and they have expressed their feelings, and they're not feeling very safe about this situation. So what's going to happen is you're going to see security systems put into these buildings, and that isn't cheap. Talk talking about one person being there. I don't believe for a minute that this is going to be one person. I think that there's going to be more than one person. So there's going to be another 100,000. I don't know what the water and electricity and all that's going to cost, and the cement going to cost, but I think that's going to be kind of expensive. You talk, now I'm not a bleeding heart for these people, I know they're criminals, but you realize that this person is going to be like in a box. He can't even go out on the porch. There's 74 rules. He's not going to have a TV. He's not going to have a phone. What in the world is this guy going to do? But that's not my problem. I'm just throwing this out. And how is he going to listen? I guess it just doesn't seem like, isn't there some way, I'm talking to the attorney now, that we can get some kind of a stay on this law and have them re-look at it, look at it again, and say, you know, this thing is too strict. It just doesn't seem right.
I'll be very clear. I think this is a horrible law. I think the law is probably unconstitutional. The problem is I don't think Winnebago County is the test case.
Well, who would challenge it? I mean, would the counties association or the insurance company challenge it?
It would have to be another county, or potentially an offender. You know, these offenders, as they wait to get put into supervised housing, the longer they wait, they're claiming, you know, look, I've been convicted, I've paid my debt to society, I should be out, and so they may challenge it. I think they're unlikely to do that because they're just inclined to sit back and wait and try to get these fines and these fees. But I think ultimately, if sanctions are imposed against a county eventually, whatever county that is ought to challenge the statute, ought to appeal the sanctions and take it up to the Wisconsin Supreme Court if necessary. Now, all that said, I don't think, let me be crystal clear, I don't think Winnebago County should do that, because the basis for challenging the law is that in some contexts and in some cases, this law is going to be impossible to comply with. In Milwaukee County, for example.
Absolutely. Milwaukee County is going to be totally impossible to deal with.
And when that happens, they, or it could happen in Dane County or somewhere else, they will be in the best position to challenge the constitutionality of the law. If we don't, you know, if we allow ourselves to be sanctioned and say, okay, well, we're going to go challenge the statute up in the appellate courts, I do not recommend doing that, because we have at least one option, which we're presenting to you today. The best case to challenge the statute, assuming the legislature doesn't just change it on their own, is going to be a case where county cannot comply with the statute, and that case is out there. It's just a matter of time.
Well, now, I called Gordon Hintz's, and they got in touch with our corporate counsel, and we did get some kind of a relief on it, Mary Ann. What was that? Would they give us more time?
No, they basically said they would be happy to meet with us in January. The legislative committee to talk.
Who is they?
This Emma Hintz, who was Gordon Hintz's assistant, said that there would be a meeting set up between, an attempt to have a meeting set up between the legislative committee and Gordon Hintz to talk about this. But again, I agree with Sam. In terms of the constitutionality, this would not be the county to test the waters on, because there is an option, and we're giving you that option. As you've said, or Sam said, it's Milwaukee County where there's no option. It's whatever county where there's no option. That's the county that's going to have the best shot at testing this law.
But in the meantime, we're going to be spending all this money just to wait for this.
Well, again, you have to decide whether you spend the $100,000 or face a potential $400,000, but also a potential release of a person who is supposed to be on supervised release. That's the real concern.
He may as well stay in prison. He's got it better there than he's gonna have it out there looking at the dump. Okay, that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Warnke. Next speaker is Supervisor Albrecht, followed by Supervisor Wingren.
Supposedly, this mobile home that we're putting out there for him is for 2 people. How long before you think the second person will be there?
No, it's a two-bedroom mobile home, but it is for one person, and the city allowed us to subdivide, and then they gave us a conditional use permit to allow for residential.
So there won't be 2 people there, there will just only be one.
By city code, we will not be allowed to put 2 people there. There will only be one.
Thank you, Supervisor Albrecht. Next speaker, Supervisor Wingren, followed by Supervisor Rasmussen.
Mistake.
Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. Next speaker, Supervisor Rasmussen, followed by Supervisor Lenz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Warnke kind of, excuse me, kind of touched on this about the employees in that area. The Highway Department has a 24/7 round-the-clock janitor watchman position. I believe it's all men at this time. It always was when I was there, but that's not to say that an 18-year-old young woman couldn't apply for that job. That's right across the sidewalk. 2 o'clock in the morning, this guy's sitting in this trailer, staring at the walls. So I'm wondering what's the ramifications of this when a position like that becomes open and a woman applies for it? How does that fit into the laws of, oh, by the way, we have a sex offender across the, if you really want this job? This just sounds confusing to me.
How did it work when there was the Uber Center there? I don't know. I mean, I gather the Uber Center was there for many years. So I don't, and again, I guess maybe Sheriff Motz might want to be able to say something regarding any, thank you.
Please, go right ahead, Sheriff.
All right, I'm going to guess that the Counties Association actually supported this, because it used to be that the state would decide where these people went. That's what caused all the ruckus down in Fond du Lac County, where the state tried putting offenders from other counties into Fond du Lac. So the legislation, I believe, was created so that the counties decided where these offenders went, and they only had to take the offenders from their own county. So if, like I said, I believe that they actually supported it, and I don't really know that we want the state choosing much for us. I talked to the Oshkosh Police Chief actually this morning about this location. He supports it wholly, supported it at the meetings with their staff and with their council. And as far as moving it 100 yards one way or another, when we looked at, now I didn't look at what was all done with GIS, but we are right in the middle of Jackson Street as the 1,500 feet. You really can't move it one way or another. Now, maybe you could move it 50 yards, but it really isn't going to make any difference. And it's a good point that the Work Release Center was there with offenders in it for how long. The other thing you have to remember, as far as the employees, they're adults. This guy preys on children. And I'm not saying that it can't happen, but that same thing can happen when you walk out into this dark parking lot. So remember that, just being aware, he would be staying within seconds of our building. And although it would be Oshkosh Police Department's primary jurisdiction, we will be there. And we can do reports in the driveway. We're not going to harass the guy, certainly, but the response would be immediate if we needed to go there. The other thing you have to remember is that if you don't approve this tonight, it could be moving to a location right next to you. So, and this happened. We have vetted for the state, prior to this law, we have vetted locations on Highway 26, 2 of them in the town of Wolf River. And you want to talk about a uproar. I mean, it's one thing to have an offender move back in with parents, with aunts and uncles, but when you start to place an offender, we had one that we vetted the location. It fit the 1,500 rule. Before the officer could get back from the town of Wolf River to the sheriff's office, that particular home was for sale. It came off the market. So in a matter of 20 minutes, that was pulled off the market. So I don't know that we want, again, this legislation allows us to make that decision on where they go. And we have looked at locations. We recently vetted another one, and there was a vulnerable adult, for this particular guy, there was a vulnerable adult that lived within 400 feet. And this is in a rural area, so finding a place is nearly impossible.
Thank you, Sheriff. Supervisor Rasmussen, anything further?
Only that this is just a frustrating thing for, I think, a lot of us and me, and I'm sorry that I vented this towards the committee there, because certainly they've done a lot of work, and it's not towards you. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rasmussen. Next speaker is Supervisor Lenz, followed by Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to start by thanking you guys for all the effort you put in there. You can see with our frustrations and concerns, you can only imagine how difficult this must have been for you guys. But I do want to ask a couple questions in regards to the money we're going to be spending. So we're going to be putting in a concrete slab. Do we know about how much that is? Because I'm
Yes,
assuming that when this is said and done, we may want to remove that.
I'll refer to Mike Elder because he was handling that piece of it, the building piece.
Attached to the budget request should be a price breakdown behind it. And those are costs that I got talking to contractors with as much information as I had at the time. And, you know, as we've been going through this, this has been a rather compressed schedule for us to try and get this all pulled together. So those are the best estimates that I've got for you right now, and that's talking to contractors.
I apologize. I may have forgot it at home. I don't recall seeing that. Do you have those numbers handy?
I'll call on the Finance Director, who I believe has some information. Please go ahead.
I do have the numbers handy. For the actual modular living quarters, it would be $45,000. Construction of the concrete pad would be $10,000. Installation of a holding tank is $15,000. New electrical service, $2,500. New gas service, another $2,500. Driveway for $5,000. They'd put a fence up for $5,000. Design services of $10,000 and a contingency of $5,000, which equals the $100,000.
So the only thing we'll be able to use if we were to pull off the residential and if we wanted to repurpose it for other means in the future would be the gas, electric, holding tank potentially.
Yeah.
The rest we'd be out from a county standpoint.
That would be correct.
Yeah, it pretty much would be a sunk cost, yeah.
It's all sunk, okay. That's all I
Thank
need.
you, Director Fitzgerald.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Lenz. Next speaker, Vice Chairman Egan, followed by Supervisor Lautenschlager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to tell Supervisor Albrecht, when I talked to Mr. Schra today, he said that there's no reason that two people couldn't go in a trailer. He said that's Oshkosh's, so if something changes there, he said that's not a state law, just so everybody understands that. He was quite surprised to hear that.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Egan. Next speaker, Supervisor Lautenschlager, followed by Supervisor Binder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I look at this situation as sort of, we're caught between a rock and a hard place. I kind of agree with Sheriff Motz that I think the County Association was kind of in favor of this because in years back, it was always the state told us where we were going to put these people. Now, at least they gave the county a little option of where we want to do it. To answer a couple of questions, I mean, not that I'm an expert on this or whatever, but I think on Supervisor Rasmussen on the fine thing, and we talked about most of this money going to the offender, but then the state would recuperate. Well, that's the way it always is. I mean, I worked out in Winnebago, mental health with 980s. I mean, so these people these 980s don't like this law because you're right. They say, hey, we did our time. You know, we served our time. We should get out of here. And we're saying, no, not yet, because we don't quite trust you. So we're gonna civilly commit you, and give you a few more years. But But in the case of the fine and the money going to the offender, you know, even Winnebago, our Department of Corrections or whatever, if you could get committed to Winnebago, and after so many years or whatever, you get out, and you owe the state money because it doesn't, you know, especially if you're a forensic and the state pays the full boat, the state can still come back and collect on you and say, hey, we want that money back. And I think that's what kind of this is talking about, where some of this money will come back to the state, because I think the state's going to come back and say, hey, wait a minute, we paid your room and board for all these years, now we're going to collect some of that back. You know, and the other thing that I understand Supervisor Rasmussen's frustration is, you know, well, how can we let this guy out? Why? He's still a danger. Well, and I agree with you, the attorney he's a civil commitment. He's a civil commitment, and the thing is, working out at Winnebago, I mean, we've had some child molesters, we've had a couple of patients out there that committed, you know, first-degree murder. They plead NGI, they get committed to Winnebago. After maybe 6 or 7 years, a psychiatrist, psychologist, judge, deemed that they're okay now. They don't go to prison and finish their term. I mean, they get let out. Is it fair? I mean, they killed somebody, but after 5 or 6 years of treatment, they're deemed that they're not a danger to themselves or to others, so we're going to let them out. This is the same thing with these 980s. I mean, sooner or later, you got to let them out, and they got to go somewhere. So it's kind of like caught between a rock and a hard place. I mean, it's not a good thing. It's not a good law, but we got to deal with it.
Thank you, Supervisor Lautenschlager. Next speaker, Supervisor Binder.
I guess I was just looking at this sheet, and I don't believe the city of Oshkosh allows holding tanks, and I don't also see any water or stormwater runoff on there, so I don't think your $100,000 is accurate, but I will be supporting it. I don't think that there's any other option at this time. We got this too late. It's probably our best option for right now. I don't believe you'll come in at the $100,000. You're probably gonna be closer to 125, but I really don't know what else we have for options at this time. I mean, we can pass this tonight, and if this guy only stays 6 months or a year, we might have more coming down the line, I guess, and we can just keep the house for future use till something else comes available. Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Binder. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and close that portion of the agenda. Certainly want to thank you all for your efforts. It's a difficult issue we're dealing with, and appreciate all your answers to our questions very much. Thank you all for being here tonight. Moving on down, Supervisor Konecki.
Yeah, could we possibly have it right now, Mr. Chairman? Or a vote on it?
So if we can have the follow-up presentation by the Corporation Counsel in regards to the County Executive Authority, and then after that, we'll take a brief break. So we'll move to the next item on the agenda, and after that, we will take a brief break. So Corporation Counsel, once again, in regards to follow-up, in regards to the County Executive Authority.
Thank you. I had contacted the Wisconsin Counties Association regarding the question about the powers of the county executive and the county board, and specifically whether the county executive was required to follow through on county board action. I did get a call from Andy Phillips from Von Briesen, and he had indicated he was calling me at the request of Wisconsin Counties Association. I posed the question to him. He asked me to follow up with an email, which I did, and I have not heard anything back from him. In fairness, I have not followed up since the email, given the fact that I've had a lot of other things basically taking a lot of my time, but I will be happy to follow up with him. But the bottom line is Andy Phillips was going to be looking at it, and he indicated he would give an opinion.
And the understanding is that he would provide a written response.
A written response to whether the county executive is required to follow through on county board action.
Thank you. Okay, any questions in regards to that? And certainly we'll update you once we have further information after his response. Okay, so before we go on to ordinances and resolutions, we'll go ahead and take a 5-minute recess.
The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly.
If we can go ahead and
Winnebago County Board
reconvene,
is currently in a break.
we will move on to the zoning reports and ordinances. So the first one is report number 001, Colleen R. and Keith L. Mustaine, Town of Oshkosh. I'll call on Supervisor Gabbard.
I make a motion to approve report number 001.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to amendatory ordinance number 12/01/2018, rezoning to R1 rural residential for tax parcel number 018-0406-05. I once again call upon Supervisor Gabbard.
Make a motion for approval of a mandatory ordinance number 1201, 2018.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion? Then we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next report. Report number 002, Tamara A. and Todd D. Goheen, Town of Algoma. I'll call on Supervisor Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move for approval of report number 002.
There's a motion and a second to approve report number 2. Any discussion? Then once again, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So moving on down to a mandatory ordinance number 12/02/18, rezoning to R1 rural residential for tax parcel number 002-0240-10-01. I'll once again call on Supervisor Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of number 002-0240-01, or 10-01.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion in regards to a mandatory ordinance number 12/0218? Then we'll do a voice vote once again. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next report. Report number 003, Lonnie Darlin, Thistle Dairy LLC, Town of Nakaimai. I'll call on Supervisor Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of report number 003.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion in regards to report number 3? And once again, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to amendatory ordinance number 12/03/2018, rezoning to R1 A2 rural residential general agriculture for tax parcel numbers 012-0647, parent P, and 012-0647-01-01. I'll once again call on Supervisor Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of mandatory ordinance 1203/2018.
There's a motion and a second for approval of a mandatory ordinance 12/03/2018. Any other discussion? And all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the final report. That's report number 004, Crystal and Jonathan Fawkes, Town of Wolf River. I'll call on Supervisor Joas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to accept report number 4.
There's a motion and a second to approve report number 4. Any discussion? And once again, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the final amendatory ordinance, that's number 120418, rezoning to R2 suburban low-density residential for tax parcel number 032-0096, parent P. Once again, call on Supervisor Joyce.
I move for adoption of amendatory ordinance number 12/04/18.
There's a motion, is there a second? There's a motion and a second to approve amendatory ordinance number 120418. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So that completes our zoning reports and ordinances. So we'll move right to the resolutions. First one today is resolution number 090-122018, disallow claim of AT&T. I will call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of resolution number 090-12-2018.
There's a motion and a second to approve the disallowal of the claim of AT&T. Any discussion? Seeing no call-ins, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution. That's resolution number 091-122018. Authority to submit a $95,000 grant application to the Fox River Natural Resources Damage Assessment Council to assist in funding the replacement of the ice-damaged Asylum Point Island Bridge with a metal clear span structure. I'll call on Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for resolution number 091-122018.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll call on Supervisor Snyder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I totally agree with this. I'm just wondering whether, ice can shove metal just as well as it can shove wood. I'm wondering when they design this new bridge, whether they want to put in some plows to divert the ice one way or the other so it doesn't affect the bridge.
The Parks Director is in the back, Rob Way. If you could perhaps answer that question.
Certainly. The bridge is going to be set on abutments on either side, so there won't be any exposure to the ice. So it'll rise above the ice.
Thank you, Director Way. And thank you, Supervisor Snyder. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next, which is ordinance number 092-0122018. Create section 3.17 of the General Code of Winnebago County, requiring the use of parcel identification numbers, PIN numbers, on all documents pertaining to real estate. I'll call on Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move approval of ordinance 92-12-2018. This is a technicality that makes the office more efficient.
There's a motion and a second. Supervisor Fari, did you call in with a question?
I did, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, please go ahead.
Simple question. I'm certainly going to support this, and in fact, I would state it should have been done years ago, probably. But my question is, why is this being brought forward by the Judiciary Committee as opposed to the Planning and Zoning Committee? It would seem to me this is a land use issue, land parcels. Can somebody answer that for me?
I believe the Register of Deeds is in the back, so I'll go ahead and call on her to answer your question.
Thank you.
The documents get recorded in the Register of Deeds office, and because all the surrounding counties already have this ordinance, I'm the one that brought it forward. And that's my committee that I go to. And I did talk to Planning and Zoning regarding this prior to that.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Supervisor Fari, for the question. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll once again do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution, and that is resolution number 093-122018. Authorize sale of 11.77 acres of excess county right-of-way, parcel number 028-043-00301 in the town of Winchester. I will call on Supervisor Albrecht.
I move for adoption of Resolution 093-12-2018.
There's a motion and a second to approve Resolution 093-122018. Discussion. First speaker is Supervisor Binder, followed by Supervisor Weiss.
I guess I'm just curious, did we get an appraisal on that land? When we were looking for the parks, the average farmland was around $65,000 to $10,000 an acre, and I see this is only at $4,500 an acre. I was just curious if they got that land appraised, or if that's just something that was worked out.
Our highway commissioner is in the back, if you could please answer.
No, there was not an appraisal done. It was just an offer by the adjoining property owner. And my recommendation to the committee, purchasing right-of-way, is that farmland typically is selling for, in that range of $4,500 to $5,000, which I felt was fair. But no, there was not an appraisal.
I know that we looked at the Nestor farm, and we got a survey of Winnebago County farmland, and the average was $6,500 to $10,000, so I don't know where you got your survey from, but the Parks Department, that's what we came up with, so.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you for your response. And thank you, Supervisor Binder. Next speaker is Supervisor Weiss, followed by Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, I noticed the committee vote was 3-2. I was just curious as to what else is there that we don't know about this.
Are there any of the committee members who voted no who want to answer? I'll call on Supervisor Fari, and then it'll be Supervisor Eisen after that. Supervisor Fari?
Thank you, Mr. I voted yes. I can explain the difference between the no and the yes, so if you'd like me to.
Okay, very well. Go ahead.
It was all about the appraisal issue.
Okay.
Now, of course, I live in the town of Vinland. I'm chairman of the town of Vinland, and I can tell you, town of Vinland, the average price is $400 to $5,500 an acre. In fact, some really nice land was just sold for $5,700 an acre. This particular parcel in the town of Winchester, I thought $4,500 was a really good price. You got to look at the land, how it lays, how wet it is, how tillable it is, that kind of issue. I would suggest in the town of Winchester, which has a lot of lower land in that town, anywhere from 4 to 5 is probably a good price to get for farmland.
Thank you.
That was my opinion, and which was expressed obviously in the committee.
Thank you, Supervisor Fari. Anything further, Supervisor Weiss?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Supervisor Eisen.
I had the same question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and attempt to do a voice vote here. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution. That is resolution number 094-122018. Authorize entry into an intergovernmental cooperation agreement relating to the Wisconsin Investment Series Cooperative and authorizing participation in the investment programs of the fund. I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of resolution number 094-12-2018.
There's a motion and a second to approve. Discussion. I'll call on Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask the Finance Director, what is the prime benefit of entering into this agreement?
It's another vehicle for us to invest our short-term funds. We are in the state pool, the LGIP state pool. This is just another resource, another vehicle to keep competitive rates. So it's really very similar to investing in money markets. So it's just one more option for me. I do local banks, I do the state pool, and this would just be another option for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Finance Director, and thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So moving on down to the next resolution. That's resolution number 095-122018. Adopt revisions to Winnebago County compensation schedule for 2019. I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of Resolution 095-12-2018.
There's a motion and a second to approve Resolution 095-12-2018. Any discussion? Seeing none. Oh. Supervisor Eisen.
I'd ask for a recorded vote, please, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So there's a request for a recorded vote. Any other discussion before we move to a vote? All right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and go to a roll call vote. Vote aye if you approve to adopt the revisions to Winnebago County compensation schedule for 2019. Vote no if you don't. And that motion carries 32-0. Moving on down to the next resolution. That's resolution number 096-122018. Authorized contract for excess workers' compensation program insurance between Winnebago County and the Safety National Insurance Company. I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of Resolution number 096-12-2018.
There's a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll once again do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution. Resolution number 097-122018. Authorized transfer of $100,000 from the undesignated general fund to capital outlay of the 2018 budget for the purchase and relocation of a manufactured home and including but not limited to concrete base and sewer and utility hookup. I'll call on Supervisor Keller.
Resolution 097-122018.
There's a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? I'll call on Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To recap on my previous comments, I'd like you all to know that I don't question the law. I don't question the application of the law. And I don't question how it was created. What I do question is the location that's being proposed. It is still my opinion there is an alternate location that would be better suited for this facility, and I would ask you to consider my concerns, and perhaps they're yours also, when you cast your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fari. Next speaker, Supervisor Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This evening, I'd like to speak on the subject of the right thing to do. Today, we're voting on a resolution 097-122018 that authorizes us to spend $100,000 to place a manufactured house for a supervised release of a sexually violent person. If some of us decide to abstain on this, I'm a first-term person, so you're going to have to walk me through this thing. If you decide to abstain, it means that we really don't care one way or another, and possibly is not county business, but it really is. Or maybe we're in conflict with some other aspect of the felon. Also, if we vote no, it will mean that we wish to ignore the new Wisconsin Law Act 184 and take our chance at being in conflict with this law and subject to fines for Winnebago County up to $1,100 a day, $33,000 a month, or $400,000 a year. The no and the abstain votes to me are unacceptable. We can't afford to take a chance with our taxpayers' money like that. $100,000 for a payback of versus $400,000. A payback of the $1,500 to $2,000 a month is much more acceptable to me. We've not been elected to gamble with our taxpayers' money like that. We need at least 24 aye votes on this by my figures. On April 17th of this year, we all stood in this room and took the oath of office, swearing before Judge Karen Seifert that we promised to support the U.S. Constitution and the Constitution of the state of Wisconsin. Unless you vote on aye today, it might be said that you as an elected supervisor, you're no longer supporting the Constitution of Wisconsin. We all stood together in agreement on the 17th of April and spoke the words of our oath of office. Now's the time to vote an aye on this resolution. I believe that this is the right thing to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiss. Next speaker is Supervisor Shorsey, followed by Supervisor Smith.
I just have a point of clarification. If we vote aye on this resolution, does it, the way it's worded, it seems to me to allow space for a different location if when they look at that, it's determined to be a better option. Is it, am I correct in interpreting the motion, that they would have some wiggle room?
I give the opportunity to the Corporation Council to take a look at the language. You're specifically referring to the lines 28 to 31, which are the now therefore be it resolved. And I assume you're referring to where it says placing on the site in question.
Yes.
And whether that gives wiggle room
Yes.
Potentially to be
address-
somewhere other than what's specifically been
Right,
discussed.
to address Supervisor
Correct.
Fari's comments.
The language in lines, actually 30 to 31, talking about placing it on the site in question, essentially contemplates what was approved by the City Planning Committee and the Common Council. And the City Planning Committee and Common Council approved the location referenced in all of the documents, not in what Supervisor Fari is representing. So, I mean, essentially, what you would have to do is going back to the Common Council, back to the Planning Committee, because right now the approval is based on the site. And as I believe Mr. Katarabik indicated, we are talking, and I believe Sheriff Motz indicated, we're talking about perhaps 100 to 200 feet, is that correct? Yes. From the original spot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Next speaker is Supervisor Smith, followed by Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to remind the committee that there will be a return on this. This is an investment as well. It is not just an expenditure.
Thank you, Supervisor Smith. Next speaker is Vice Chairman Egan, followed by Supervisor Spellman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to bring up at this time that in facilities, we did ask Mike Elder to go ahead and talk to the landfill about possibly that land over there. I do not believe, seeing Mike over there, that they've had time to talk on it whatsoever. This is something that's got to be done, but possibly one time they were interested in the Huber, maybe they'd be interested in this piece of land, but I do not know as if we have time to go ahead and do that now, because it'll probably take at least another 2 months. So I guess if we want to take a chance at $500 to $1,100 a day and take our chance at that, we can go ahead and hold off. But like I said, I would prefer having it moved over there too, but I don't know as if we can hold off at this time.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Egan. Next speaker is Supervisor Spellman, followed by Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to provide some clarification regarding the no vote of the Personnel and Finance Committee. So this was brought to our committee meeting, and Mary Ann did a great presentation. After some discussion, I moved to support the resolution, and there was no second by anyone in the committee, and so that is why there is a no vote here for the Personnel and Finance Committee.
Thank you for that information. Next speaker is Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be remiss as an officer of the Solid Waste Management Board in not presenting the perspective of the solid waste department, as expressed in the letter that was distributed at the meeting today, distributed through the county email system. But my perspective of the issue is that the need is high, the penalty appears imminent, alternatives do not seem to be reasonably available, and the costs are affordable. The fact that it will impose upon the solid waste department's property, inhibit the use of a developing of a park, perhaps is unfortunate. But it appears that our responsibility as Winnebago County supervisors who are protecting the public safety have an obligation to take the recommendation of our sheriff, of our city police chief, of our committee that was formed to find a suitable piece of property. Now, the whole perspective of the Section 980 law gives a safety valve to the community for protecting the public from a potentially violent citizen, someone who has perhaps served his time but is evaluated by the community as a danger. This particular program involving the release, the supervised release of these individuals is protecting their constitutional rights. If the statute 980 was not there, these particular individuals would be released to the public to be able to live anywhere that they choose. This is a noble experiment, and Winnebago County is at the forefront of municipalities in providing a particular housing unit for this individual. I will support this, and I will ask for other supervisors' support, and I would ask that this be a recorded vote.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. We'll make sure it's a recorded vote. Next speaker is Supervisor Albrecht.
This is just a clarification. Personnel and Finance never voted on it. We never brought it up we never took it up at our meeting. I believe that was Facilities and Property Management Committee that had the 3-to-1 vote.
Thank you for the clarification. Seeing no other speakers, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote just for clarification. So this requires a 2/3 vote of the membership, which as Supervisor Weiss accurately stated, that means 24 yes votes. Please understand, if you have an abstain vote, since it's 2/3 of the membership, that is equivalent to a no vote. So 2/3 of the membership, 24 votes required to approve. So vote aye if you approve, vote no if you don't. And that motion carries 32-1. So moving on down to the final resolution this evening. That's resolution number 098-122018. Authorize the creation of an ad hoc public engagement committee. I will call on Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the adoption of 098-122018.
So there's a, please go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, the reason why I'm bringing this forth is many know for many years I have thought that this board should do a better job of informing the public of what it does. And I've tried many times to try to get efforts and never really have been stymied. And then what really encouraged me, a couple of things. First, we had a couple of new members who got elected who said they thought that we should be engaging with the public and get to more public input forum. And then Dane County, actually, their county board chairman created an engagement committee, a committee that was formed and is formed to engage and reach out to people who don't normally interact with the county board. And that's the input of this. And that's why I thought, instead of Supervisor Norton bringing a number of suggestions, that I would bring an ad hoc committee, a committee of between 5 and 7, whatever the committee chair or the county board chairman designates, to come together and after a year find out ideals and about how to engage and better inform the public with the county board. And that's the gist of it. And that's why I'm bringing this forth now.
Thank you, Supervisor Norton. Any other discussion? I'll call on Supervisor Eisen, followed by Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I totally accept and agree with all the resolution declarations, except perhaps for line 9, that the resolution is recommended to be formed by the chairman of the Winnebago County Board. However, the chairman did not sign on to that resolution, but the resolution is made in the chairman's name. I question that. Now, in order to discuss this resolution, I'd like to take the opportunity to summarize it. Line 7, to encourage citizen awareness, participation, and involvement in county government. Well, that's good. Line 12, involve Winnebago County residents in problem solving. That's good. Line 14, communicate issues. That's good. Line 17, promote transparency. That's good. Line 20, initiate studies of public engagement. That's good. Line 23, remove barriers to participation. Line 25, strategic public engagement policies and initiatives. And line 28, improve county government. Now, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring to your attention and to that of my fellow supervisors that we already have a structure in place with which to achieve these objectives. And that structure is the UW Extension Department, Division of Community Development. And the mission of that division is to collaborate with Winnebago County to address local issues. We address public policy issues, public engagement processes. And between October 2016 and 2017, the UW Extension Community Development held 4 sessions addressing these very same issues that are addressed in this resolution. Mr. Chairman, I move to refer this resolution to the UW Extension Committee to work with the community development educator to present a presentation to the county board, options to achieve these goals. And let me refer to page 3 of the 2017 UW Extension Annual Report. UW Extension educators provided organizational development support through teaching, coaching, and facilitating strategic planning and decision-making processes. This included fostering skills in board leadership, visioning, relationship building, and evaluating program and organizational efficiency to prioritize resources. UW Extension supported neighborhood leadership, capacity building, training in the Fox Valley, Oshkosh area in order to build neighborhood leaders and stronger connections. I know that there are 13 supervisors that signed on to this resolution, but I think it's appropriate to give this to the UW Extension Committee so that their community development educator can put together a program that will meet these objectives instead of just throwing it up in the air and expending additional resources on chasing these issues. Now, I need a second in order to forward that to the committee.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. So there's a motion and a second to refer to the UW Extension Committee. That does take precedence, and it is debatable. Just one point I wanted to make out, and I'll explain it if this doesn't pass, because it's a moot point if it does pass, because then it's up to the UW Extension Committee to decide what they do with it. But I did notice what you're saying on lines 9 and 10, and I crafted language to reflect what I suspect was the intent, or certainly what I would think would make sense. So if this does not pass and referred back to UW Extension, I'll offer up a suggestion to address what Supervisor Eisen was referring to in lines 9 and 10. But the motion on the floor is to refer to the UW Extension Committee. So that is our discussion going forward. So next speaker is Supervisor Wingren, specifically on the referral to the UW Extension Committee.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I have some concerns about this. The main one is, once again, we have a resolution not coming through a committee. So I think that going through the proper channels is good, not just for this, but for all resolutions, because we have people who are experts, and can bring a variety of opinions and think it out, talk it out, and 5 people on a committee or whatever number is a good thing, talk it out. So good reason there. Then you look at the range of experience on the signers here. That's good. I think maybe on the UW committee there's a range of experience on the board that would know what we're talking about. Line 9 says a nonpartisan committee. Well, the sponsors of this, 9 of them, are openly identified as particular partisans, which is neither good nor bad. I agree with Supervisor Eisen that all of the goals here are terrific. That's wonderful. I commend Mike Norton for his continued interest in this. I am told before the meeting that at least one of the signers of this did not give permission for her name to be on this petition. That troubles me. So for all those reasons, I think going back to the regular committee, doing it that way, you'll get more support from the board and from the committee that's eventually chosen.
Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. Next speaker is Supervisor Lenz, followed by Supervisor Albrecht.
In regards to this, just a simple correction of my name. When my ancestors came over, we decided to go with the L-E-N-Z.
Yeah,
and
did
no
notice
T.
that as well. Absolutely, we'll certainly correct that. Thank you, Supervisor Lenz. Next speaker is Supervisor Albrecht, followed by Supervisor Norton.
Some years ago, I was asked to give a talk at Lakeside School on county government. And then, a couple of years ago, I was asked at Reed School in Oshkosh to give a talk on county government. This year, I was asked to give I can't think of the school right at the moment because of my age, but I was asked to give a talk on county government to some second graders. And I guess they're thinking, the moral of the story is, I guess they're thinking they're downgrading me to people that I can communicate with. But in each case, a couple of years ago, the 4th grade class, a little girl raises her hand, and we talked about that we, protect them with the jail from people that don't behave and stuff like that. And one little girl says, "My dad was in your jail." And so then this last year now, the little girl says, a couple months ago, this little girl says, "My dad was in your jail." So that's a sign of what's coming of our young children.
Thank you, Supervisor Albrecht. Next speaker is Supervisor Norton, followed by Supervisor Smith.
I guess my question is, if this would be sent back to the Municipal Extension Committee, when would they bring it back to this board? And that's my main concern, because nothing's been done. With all due respect, I've been talking about this for a number of years. Nothing's been done formally on this county board, and that's why I'm bringing forward to it. And that's, can anyone answer that question for me? If this passes, this motion, when would it be coming back to this county board? Because that's what I'm really concerned about.
I'll be straight with you. I don't think you can answer that. Anyone can answer that because it would be up to the UW Extension Committee at that point. Thank you, Supervisor Norton. Next speaker is Supervisor Smith, followed by Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a problem with starting ad hoc committees that are covering ground that's already, as Mr. Eisen has mentioned, is already being covered by another entity within the county. And if you take a look at this, you're looking at people that are already involved in government by being county board supervisors and moving along with an ad hoc committee, and that I think is not a redoubling of efforts, but causing a little confusion. So I agree with having this sent back to the committee and having it looked at as a fully included resolution, understanding just exactly what would be accomplished with an ad hoc committee like this.
Thank you, Supervisor Smith. Next speaker is Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm opposed to sending this back or sending it to a committee. With all due respect to the UW Extension Committee, if these are its goals, I think they failed. When I was running for this position, I spoke to probably 200 people. Not one of them had any idea of what a county board actually does, and that was very, very concerning. When Supervisor Norton approached me anyway with this, I supported it immediately. I think this is important. Rarely do we see people from the public come to these meetings and express their support or opposition, except for, in the rare circumstances. I think we do need to do a better job encouraging citizens of Winnebago County to know exactly what is decided by this board, the different committees that this board has, the fact that they can go to those different committee meetings and see exactly what's decided. I don't think enough citizens of Winnebago County know what we do. And I don't want this resolution to die in a committee that says, oh no, we're already handling this, but really isn't. So I would be opposed to sending this to committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hogan. Next speaker is Supervisor Binder.
I guess I'd just like to say all the help that we could get on that committee. I'm on the UW Extension Committee, and our 4-H program was just written up for not having enough diversity. Well, if we can get more people interested in 4-H, we can achieve those goals, but we need to get it out in the community. There only is a small group. Our 4-H director left because she was working 60 hours a week and said she couldn't do it no more. We don't have the help or the people there to go out and promote all this. We do the best we can with the resources we have. So I guess I urge that if we can get more people to get out and get people involved in this, the better. Our 4-H program, we could end up basically losing some of our funding because we don't have enough diversity. And we talked about it at the meeting. We don't know how to go out and basically recruit these kids to get what we're required to have. But, we're talking about it. But the more help we can get, the better off we'll be.
Thank you, Supervisor Binder. Next speaker, Supervisor Lenz.
I just had one thing. When I set out to run for county office, I did make it my goal to bring more transparency and bring the county government to the people. Like Hogan, I did run into a good number of people who asked me, well, what does the county do? And, I gave them the kind of canned answer, but it really got me thinking, we could probably do better. Bring the county government to them, give them, we need to get people more involved in our local government. And I think by having something like this, which will bring communication to them, is important, and I think it's a responsibility of ours, and we shouldn't just send it off to a committee to vote on. I think we should vote on this and make this our action.
Thank you, Supervisor Lenz. Seeing no other call-ins, call on Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I took the liberty to visit the UW Extension site, and any of you who have a computer are welcome to visit the UW Extension site. And as you go through the links, there's a program that the extension ran called Neighborhood Partners Network. It's their vision for communities in the entire Fox Valley region, strengthened by ever-growing numbers of increasingly vibrant and productive neighborhoods. The purpose is to train a cadre of leaders to forge the relationships and mobilize the assets necessary to create positive change in their neighborhoods, to support a network of municipal and other governmental, nonprofit, and corporate institutions that together develop best practices in effectively supporting and working alongside emerging and established neighborhood organizations. I'm not going to go on this, but I'm going to say that between 2016 and 2017, UW Extension held 4 community sessions in which they invited the public to come to these sessions, in which they were accomplishing the very same goals that we are referred to a ad hoc committee. So I reinforce my original motion to refer this back to the committee because they have a professional community development educator who can lead these issues and design and contact perhaps the sponsors of this resolution can make contact with our community development educator and work with them to achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next speaker, Supervisor Schneider, specifically on the refer to the UW Extension Committee.
Yeah, just in response to Paul's
Please.
comment, the things that he just made reference to were much more local than county. They were actually neighborhoods. And the individual who headed up that particular effort has now moved up the ladder a little bit. We now have a new office head out there. Her name is Mia Leung, and she will be introduced to us. She couldn't make our meeting on Thursday. She'll be introduced to us in January. Although I think that our committee could lend itself to this effort, I think it might wash it down. I think we could better handle it right here among us with the number of people, at least do some planning here. We can always request some assistance from UW Extension, but I'd like to give us a chance to do this. I think there's a lot of bright people on this board, and we can come up with some outreach that might give us some very positive results. So I'm actually against the referral, and I'd like to just go ahead and vote on the original.
Thank you, Supervisor Schneider. Next speaker, Supervisor Fari, followed by Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think my question is to Tom as chairman of the UW Extension Committee. And my question would be, if this is referred back to your committee, as chairman, would you be encouraged to find some continuity between what's being proposed and what's already established through the UW Extension system. However, I believe your previous comments somewhat have answered that question. If it is referred back, how would you propose to reach some kind of a coordination between this resolution and what's already being addressed by UW Extension?
Supervisor Schneider?
Yeah, Chuck, in my comments, in the fact that we've gone through quite a restructuring in the last couple of years. The state cut $3.2 million out of cooperative extension, and we've gone through quite a hand-wringing and restructuring, and that would have a lot to do with it. I'm sure we could handle it, but at this point, our structure is still being formed with the new offices and the new personnel there. I think we could lend a lot to it, but what Mike is asking is timely, and I'm not sure we could provide that right at this point.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Supervisor Snyder. Thank you as well, Supervisor Fari. Next speaker is Supervisor Finch.
I don't need to talk because when Tom just got done talking about timing and the knowledge and everything, he answered my question for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Finch. Okay, so the motion is to refer it to the UW Extension Committee. So it's not actually back, but to it, since it didn't specifically come from the committee. So we'll go ahead and do this by a roll call vote. So vote aye if you would like to refer it to UW Extension Committee. Vote no if you don't. This requires a simple majority of the members present to refer back. Refer to. So that motion fails 11 to 22. So we are back on the original motion. And before any other discussion, I just want to make one comment because I was making a reference to what Supervisor Eisen had said, and it was a good point that he was bringing up in regards to lines 9 and 10. He was specifically talking about where it says, whereas an ad hoc nonpartisan public engagement committee, parentheses, the committee, is recommended to be formed by the chairman of the Winnebago County Board to facilitate the fulfillment of the aforementioned role of the Winnebago County. I think what the intent was there, and I don't want to speak for the authors necessarily, but I think it addresses what Supervisor Eisen was referring to. I think what would make more sense there is right after where it says parentheses a committee, instead of saying is recommended to be formed, you take out those words and you say would be formed based on committee membership recommendations from the chairman of the Winnebago County Board to facilitate the fulfillment of the affirmation role of Winnebago County, which essentially would mean that then, if this was approved, it would be my responsibility to make a recommendation to you all in terms of an actual committee membership for that ad hoc committee. I suspect that was the intent. It's you as a body to decide whether you want to make that change or not. But I offer that up because I think that's at least related to the point that Supervisor Eisen was referring to.
Well, that was my intent, so I'll have to offer an amendment to my next resolution. I will, because my point is that you make up the membership of this committee, and no one else does, so that's what, my, yeah.
Okay, so there are two other speakers before you, so I'm going to give them an opportunity to speak, but then if you want to make a motion, then you'll have that opportunity. So thank you, Supervisor. So next speaker is Supervisor Powers, followed by Supervisor Rasmussen.
I'm sorry, it was a mistake. I bumped it.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Powers. Next speaker is Supervisor Rasmussen, followed by Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From what I'm hearing in the conversation here, it seems that we have an extension office that is maybe understaffed or overworked or something, and that this committee is going to be doing some of that work. It seems to me that now becomes an employee issue. I'd like to remind everybody that we are here a policy-making board. for us to be forming a committee to helping out a department that has employees because they, for whatever reason, maybe not doing this, I'm not sure, but I just think we're getting into some odd territory here with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rasmussen. Next speaker is Supervisor Shorsey, and then afterward, I'm going to give Supervisor Norton an opportunity because I had told him that I would, and then Supervisor Snyder will follow after that. So for Supervisor Shorsey, followed by Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am going to vote no on this because I never liked the idea of another group of people setting strategic direction for, which is our responsibility. And I just sent Supervisor Egan a link to the Wisconsin Counties Association list of priorities. And I think it's more appropriate for us to start looking at that information and then also instituting a strategic planning process with the board. In terms of communicating that, you know, that's something we can discuss. That can be a support staff function, but I do not like the idea of an ad hoc committee setting strategic direction and deciding what issues the board is going to pursue in the community. So I will be voting no.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. I'll call on Supervisor Norton, followed by Supervisor Snyder.
I'm going to need some help here, Mr. Chairman. What was the exact wording of the language?
So in line number 9, there's a parentheses where it says committee. And after that, it says is recommended to be formed by. Remove is recommended to be formed by and replace it with would be formed based on committee membership recommendations from the chairman of the Winnebago.
Okay, that's what I want to do.
So there's a motion to modify the language to reflect, it would say would be formed based on committee membership recommendations from, and that would replace the words is recommended to be formed by in lines 9 and 10. So there's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. So
I think, can I speak to the amendment, or do I have to wait my turn? It's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
No, you can speak to the amendment.
Supervisor Scorsese just said that there should be a strategic planning committee. Is that what you called it? Am I saying that correctly? This is a committee that would not be grouped to decide the goals of what this board would be doing. This committee would be an ad hoc committee to come up with deals how we can better engage the public and better inform the public what we do. So that, I see what you said and what I want to do are two different things. This would be done by whatever board members, if it's passed the county board chairman name, they would be saying, how ways can we better engage the public? How ways can we better inform the public what we do? That's what we'd be doing. The strategic planning thing, to me, is different. It would not be a separate group. I mean, if you want to have an ad hoc, not ad hoc, I hate to, don't like that word. If you want a committee or someone to study that, you can do that, but what I want to do is different, much different. Like I say, I thought it was pretty basic. How do we better engage the public? How do people win? I thank Supervisor Hogan who said, when he went around, people don't know what county board does, what the county government does. I think what Supervisor Snyder said, that the UW Extension could not totally do this. Would I maybe look at what they did? Yeah, but he's right. It's a county-wide committee. And I really think this is much needed because people don't know what county board does. And I tell you what, I've heard people who don't know how to engage the county board. That's why our colleagues in Dane County did. It's an ad hoc committee. It's not a permanent committee. It'll be in existence for about a year to come up with ideas. And I'm sure the chairman will name people from different areas around the county with different expertise. That's what they've done. So I want to say it's different what you have in mind. So that's why I think this is much needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Norton. Next speaker is Supervisor Snyder, followed by Supervisor Eisen, specifically on the amendment for the wording change in line 910.
Actually, my comment were more to answering Joel from,
Okay.
It's not that University of Wisconsin Extension could not provide this, but our efforts are more local, one-to-one, that we meet on nutrition, we meet on fiscal responsibilities and things of that nature. It's not that we couldn't provide something to this, but my goodness, I'm not sure that that's the right mission for us.
Thank you, Supervisor Snyder. Supervisor Eisen, but let's hold the
I'll
debate.
take a pass on that.
Okay.
Pass on the amendment.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. So, I'm going to go ahead and attempt to do a voice vote for this amendment. So, the amendment would be in lines 10 to remove, 9 and 10 to remove is recommended to be formed by and replace would be formed based on committee membership recommendations from. That would be the only change. Okay? So all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So we're back on the original motion as amended. Any other discussion about the original resolution as amended? Supervisor Eisen.
I would first like to say that all of these talking points are very important and integral to this board. And I feel that they are so integral that I would like to amend this line 23. And the way I would like to amend it, and I'll probably need assistance from the Assistant Corporation Counsel, is I would like to see the committee, the Corporation Council, I would like to see the committee be a committee of the whole of the county board to meet at 5:30 prior to county board meetings to discuss those issues. And that's a way everybody can participate. Everybody's coming here, everybody's getting paid per diem, everybody's getting paid mileage. It's not going to cost the county board another penny, another nickel, but it's going to have to get supervisors to come here a half hour early, and everybody can have their say in this issue. And we can continue that on for as long as it's relevant and that the county board wants to do that. And I would like to have somebody second that, because I think that's a good idea.
There's a motion and a second, but I'll be honest, I'm struggling with the wording of the language you would be wanting to put in 23 and 24.
That's why I called on the Corporation Council, because instead substituting for an ad hoc committee, we could specify a county board committee of the whole to meet at 5:30 prior to county board meetings.
So Supervisor, just to be clear, so you would substitute ad hoc public engagement committee for county board committee of whole?
Correct.
Is that what you're trying to?
Correct. And specifically to meet 5:30 prior to county board meetings, so that we're all coming here, we'll all be able to have our say.
And outside parties as well.
So I do have some thoughts on this, but I don't know if I should step down and maybe give you the, okay. I'll step down.
He doesn't get off work until 5:30.
I don't even know which button to push. Chairman Ramos.
I understand the intent of Supervisor Eisen. The only reason I struggle with it a little bit is, at least in my understanding of the way the committee of the whole is utilized, is it's usually utilized one time, and then you would determine the next time whether you're not going to go into a committee of the whole. In other words, theoretically, two things you can do for a committee of the whole. One We could go into a committee of whole right now, actually, to discuss a certain matter. Or two, you can plan something in advance, which could be on an agenda, like he's saying, to go into a committee of the whole. However, with each subsequent potential meeting, you would have to go into another committee of the whole each time. Because it, once again, is not a standing committee or an ad hoc committee. So in other words, you would meet as the committee of the whole, and then if you thought you needed to meet again, you would have to then do another committee of the whole and keep on going with that until you thought you had achieved whatever you were going to achieve. The other reason I struggle with that is, to be honest, getting the input is one thing, I agree, but trying to move forward with what I think he's trying to achieve with a body this large, I think would become challenging. So it's not that you couldn't do committee of the whole, it's in Robert's rules. It's just, I would tell you, it's not designed for something like this. That I can tell you pretty confidently. So I'd urge you not to move to doing it in a committee of the whole format.
I would like a chair like this, please.
I'll call on the next speaker is Supervisor Finch, followed by Supervisor Shorsey. Now, just to be clarified though, he had a motion, and there was a second. So the discussion is really about moving this to a committee of the whole format in the future.
Correct, authorizing the creation of a committee of the whole committee. Can I read as you folks can keep talking?
Supervisor Finch.
Okay, committee of the whole. I'm kind of against that the night of a county board meeting, because if he says 5:30 and it takes an hour, hour and a half, and I've seen this stuff happen, not just here, but other committees, what do? We have people sitting out here waiting to be talked about on something that's on the agenda, but we're talking about this, all right? A lot of times it will take more than just a half hour on a lot of stuff. So I personally think we should not even attempt to do it the way we've been doing it all these years. I don't think anybody, and I repeat, anybody, has had a bad time with it. So if you want to go through all this stuff, go for it, but my vote definitely would be no. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Finch. Next speaker is Supervisor Shorsey, followed by Supervisor Smith.
I would just like to make the point, underscore strategic planning, which we have not done for quite a while, that a lot of these issues would be addressed in a strategic planning session, and then we would set priorities and decide who was going to do what. And it would be done as a whole, as opposed to, creating this new form of structure.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Next speaker is Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I would be against this amendment. We're adding a whole new problem by doing something like that, so I'm against the amendment.
Thank you, Supervisor Smith. Next speaker is Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The comment with the motion was made that this wouldn't cost the county anything. I would want a ruling on that you're creating a committee, telling everybody to come early. I guarantee you'll have people writing down a committee meeting for per diem and then the county board for per diem. To say that this is just added on for a half hour earlier, I don't see that working at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rasmussen. Supervisor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. We just got through I think they had a government day here just a few months or so ago, and we had probably 50, 60 junior high school people here, and at least 60 about, and I would think they would probably go home and tell, we were at the county, and we had government day, and we went and seen how the county board was operating, and every year we have this, and we don't think that that the whole county understands what government is doing, county board is doing. I just don't understand. I just don't go along with this resolution anyway.
Thank you, Supervisor Ellis. Next speaker is Supervisor Warnke.
I am going to absolutely vote no on this. I don't think it belongs on the county board. I think it belongs out at the extension office, and those people are well educated, they know how to do things, and this is where it belongs. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Warnke. Seeing no other call-ins, there was a motion and a second. It wasn't specific language, but the language was to utilize
To essentially replace the word ad hoc public engagement committee with county board committee of the whole. And while you folks have been discussing it, I have looked at it, and I do see that it talks about committees of the whole, and they are allowed in Robert's rules. Again, I don't know what it would do. It basically consists of the entire body of members in attendance at the assembly meeting, but it's technically not the assembly. You can make recommendations. So yes, it is allowed in Robert's rules, and then I guess your board has to decide whether they believe that there's anything to be gained by doing that.
Okay, so seeing no other call-ins, we will go ahead and do this by a roll call vote. So the amendment is to change the wording from this being an ad hoc public engagement committee to be a committee of whole format. And just so you understand, that wouldn't create anything right now, just to be clear. Because the committee of whole format, once again, you do have to, by Robert's rules, there's actually a motion you have to make to go into a committee of whole each time. So just to clarify, if you did that, you wouldn't actually be creating anything right now. So vote aye if you want to approve changing it from an ad hoc public engagement committee to a committee of the whole. Vote no if you do not. Supervisor Locke? Oh, thank you. And that motion fails 3-29 with one abstention. So that actually concludes our agenda item. Oh, wait, actually, I apologize. Not so fast. We're back on the main, nice try. We're back on the main motion, which is to authorize the creation of an ad hoc public engagement committee. Any other discussion in regards to the main motion, once again, as amended with the language change? I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen, followed by Supervisor Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go back to line 23 also was brought up to remove barriers to participation in county government. You know, county government is here to provide a service, and this county does it quite well. I'm wondering what these barriers are. I mean, if people want to participate in the government county service, get a job here. There's always openings. Do they want to do you talk to somebody who wants to get on the board? Encourage them to run for the board. If someone wants to just get involved, there's plenty of committees, a lot of committees through the county exec's office. Individually, this stuff can just be done. I'm not understanding what all these barriers are, because to say there's barriers is to say that our county government isn't working properly, and I don't agree with that. I mean, I, as an employee and in this board, have been with this county for 40 years, and It runs quite well. I think this is just a committee that's looking for, I think it's the old cliche, it's a solution looking for a problem. I just don't see any purpose in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rasmussen. Next speaker is Supervisor Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look back at those days that I was out in January trying to get signatures, and then after that, trying to get votes on that and talking to people, and I think it was Mr. Lenz made the comment about what's a supervisor. I ran into that same situation. Up in the, I call it the northern tier of Winnebago County, it's kind of a dead zone there. We don't get the northwestern up there and have everything fed to us. And they have no idea what it is. So anything that comes along here that is going to help get the word out, I'm going to be all for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiss. I'll call on Supervisor Wingren.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's up to us as members of this board to educate our people what's going on, what our position is. I wonder, people that said that they don't know, people don't know what's going on. Since they were elected, did they go house to house, talk to people? I have. Did they send out newsletters? I do. So, I think the key is we should encourage people to run for this board. If everybody had an opponent, we'd be invited to candidate forums, we'd be invited to answer questionnaires. People would begin to know. If this is the hidden government in our area, people don't know about it because we don't tout our own horn. We should, because we do good stuff here, really good stuff.
Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. So, seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and go to a roll call vote. Remember, you're voting to approve the authorization of the creation of an ad hoc public engagement committee with the amendments as we did on lines 9 and 10. So you vote aye if you want to approve, vote no if you don't. This will take a simple majority of the members present. And that motion fails 15 to 17. So that would mean that the committee will not be created. So that completes our agenda items for this evening. So I will call on Supervisor Albrecht for a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn until January 8th, special orders.
There's a motion to adjourn. I want to give Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr.
Did I
Chairman.
miss some?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've discussed a lot of things tonight, important stuff, routine stuff. But one thing we failed to say, I think, is probably more important. That is how happy we are to see Mary Beth Gabbard back here.
Yeah. Thank you,
She reminds me of a card I once got. It said, life isn't about avoiding storms. Life is about learning how to dance in the rain. And boy, she is a strong dancer. So welcome back, Mary Beth.
Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. Very good point. Very good point. So there was a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.